Mr. Knopf.
Normally when I give this report, it's a little different between the ISB and the council. And generally, because with the council, there's some catch-up, I think, a little bit on the nuts and bolts of what's been going on. In this case, it ties pretty directly to this recent conversation. One of the things that's been on our plate and has occupied a great deal of our time recently is work on the budget, which, of course, is significant for 14-15 because right now we're moving from building a plan to implementing that plan. And so we now have covered actions we have to talk about. We have integration and coordination of agency actions. We have accountability functions, and we have the emerging role of science in the greater Delta scientific community. So all those things have to be pulled together, and those are new tasks, basically, for the council and for the science program. So as Phil had mentioned a little earlier, the governor has taken a very lean perspective, I think, on the budget, saying that we're basically not expanding programs, and yet we find ourselves in the dilemma where by dictate, by law, we have to expand this program. And so we're trying to do that in the most effective, efficient way we possibly can and present that to the governor and see what he has to say on June 10th. One of the things that's been going on this has been an ongoing dialogue. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here for us to continue that dialogue and take a look at not only the positions that we have requested that we think are essential to implement this plan, both on the science side and on the planning side of the house, the policy side. But also, there's other funding that's associated with that. There's grant funding for science. There is contracting funding on our side that is all at issue and is all subject to convincing the governor what's appropriate. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to get together on that and move that forward. Some of the other things that are going on in the council right now, of course, we're spending a fair amount of time supporting the ongoing litigation that's building a record that the court can use. We're also talking a bit about accountability. And accountability is one of those key functions that are part of our implementation structure. And that basically means, can we describe to the public and to other agencies how the money is being spent, what outcomes are being achieved, and what performance measures, in fact, are being used and achieved. So it's a tricky task right now to get that through. And I think one of the things that is going to help us on that we're also undertaking is we're creating a end-of-year report. And it's something that this will be the first time, and of course trying to create the end-of-year report before you've been collecting a lot of data is kind of tricky, as you can imagine. But I think what we're trying to do is set the goal, the marker, and then use whatever data is available now to fill in those questions that we'll ask, but knowing that we won't be able to do them all right now. But at least establish where we're going with that, because it'll help alignment of the databases, the data collection, that sort of thing, so that we can feed that into the future in order to have a better handle on how well we're doing in recovering the Delta and providing a reliable supply of water. Some of the other things were mentioned briefly here, the science program, and I think Peter is probably going to go into far more detail, but we've had, I think, a very productive dialogue with the Coordinated Adaptive Management Team. And the significance of this is, I think the biggest obstacle that we've faced here is the integration of all the different aspects of science that are ongoing. Everybody has their own perspective, and in some cases they're complementary, some cases they're not, but they're often duplicative of one another. And I think the coordination of that is really an essential component of this. And it really has come to a point, I think, with the biological opinions and the judge's remand and charge to come up with an adaptive management process for Fish and Wildlife Service and the California Department of Fish and Game, of which the CAMPT, or Coordinated Adaptive Management Team, is charged. They have to have that result by February 15th, which is a very, very short time to develop something that is potentially as complex as this could be. And I think they're making good progress, and I would like to say thank you to Peter and the whole science program, because they've really stepped up and I think taken a leadership role to help lead some of that coordination. Also, we've been talking off and on about the implementation committee, and a lot of great progress has gone on in that. A lot more has to be made, but it is moving along in a very positive way. Some of the other things that have occurred recently is, of course, we've made presentations, and there's been, I made 2 presentations, one to the Bay Estuary Conference a couple of weeks ago, and then one to the Food and Ag Council, I think it is, in Modesto. And the subject was water supply for the Food and Ag Council, and then integration, and how are the different agencies integrating their programs. And the importance of this can't be understated. One of the things that caused the creation of the Delta Stewardship Council was a perception that CalFed was unable to integrate the actions of the different agencies. And so one of our major charges is to provide that coordination, integration of the separate programs. And I think it bears repeating often, how do we do that? In the Delta Plan, there are 73 recommendations. Those recommendations are, in fact, actions of different agencies. This is sort of an inglorious role for the Council, because the agencies themselves are the one that rightfully should get the credit. Our role is more of a background role, is telling them it's important, promoting it, removing barriers when we can, assisting them in accomplishment of those things. So it's an important case when we have a situation like the Governor's Water Action Plan that in fact is highlighting important issues like groundwater storage, groundwater maintenance of the quality, and just storage overall. Because if you look at the Delta Plan, these are recommendations. These are 3 recommendations of the 73 I just mentioned, but WR 9, 10, and 11 all deal with groundwater storage and are included in the Governor's Action Plan. So I think it's a tribute to the persistence of the Council and all of you that it's gotten to this point that, in fact, more and more people are repeating these actions, and they're being accomplished. So I think with that, there's something that I think we just have to keep in front of us. It's not something that we get to stand up and wave the flag very often about, but we do have a role in that. And I think the role has some effectiveness.
I wanted to underscore that Chris and the staff have worked well in this lead up to the presentation of the governor's budget to convince the administration of the importance of funding existing positions where the funding has been dependent on bond monies and new positions. This is a hard case to make. A lot of water activity, including the CalFed program, has relied on the easy virtue of bond funding, which is long-term borrowed money, many cases for operational activities that is running out. And retaining positions is a lot harder when the source of the funding is the general fund, which is in competition with all the other states' priorities. But it's a transition that the state has to make and we have to make, and looking ahead to whatever bond is in the future, we cannot expect to fund science activities or coordination or management activities of the council on that bond funding. And it's a effort that the staff is doing now in coordination with other state agencies, and then of course with the Department of Finance, that will be revealed as the governor presents his budget. But I think you've done a good job with that. And as we look ahead to financing, I think we have to be more clear of what's appropriate for bond funding and what we need to look to other sources, some of which are general fund and some might be federal or other grant opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. It's fairly pointless to be asking for money that you can't get, that it's an inappropriate use for that money. But I think we've got a long way to go yet on exploring some of the options, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. So just a few other things I failed to mention. Keith Coolidge gave a presentation to the Northern California Water Forum, sponsored by Dan Logue, and that was last week as well. Some of the other things that were ongoing right now and is occupying a great deal of time, we've had several people take on new jobs, so we have quite a hole in our engineering department right now, and so we've been doing pretty much nonstop interviews recently, and one of our engineering positions was actually upgraded to a supervisor engineering position, which was something that we didn't expect, but it was something that's necessary for us to retain those people into the future. And that's about all I've got for